I wasn't born to bend the knee. Where I come from, strength is the only currency that spends. I was raised in fire, trained to fight, to hunt, to protect, and if necessary, to destroy. I've seen the life leave a man's eyes in battle. I've held the line when others fled. I earned my place through blood, not words. People feared me. They respected me. I was everything a warrior was supposed to be, and still something in me was empty. This land you now call Canada, it was mine before maps, before flags. I was born into the winded confederacy called Huron by the French. Our villages spread across the river valleys and Great Lakes of Ontario. I was of the Bear clan. We fished and farmed. We warred and worshipped. We believed the spirits lived in the wind, the trees, and the voices of our ancestors. I was not just a fighter. I was a war chief, a leader among warriors. I trained men to face the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, what the French called the Iroquois, who had begun a brutal campaign to control the fur trade and expand their territory. Our sworn enemies. They came to steal, to burn, to crush us, armed with Dutch muskets and a hunger for dominance. I fought to keep our people alive. My name was Ahatsistari. That name meant he who strikes with fire, and that's exactly who I was. I was a predator on the battlefield and a guardian at home. And when the drums beat and the sky turned red, I moved like wind through the forest, my axe silent until the strike. My people celebrated me. The elders honored me. The enemy feared me. But for all the battles I won, there was one fight I couldn't conquer, the war inside myself. I carried a weight I didn't understand. At night after victory, I'd sit by the fire while the others sang. And I'd feel hollow, not weak, not sad, just incomplete, as if I was built for something more than killing. I kept wondering why the old spirits didn't speak, why the sacrifices felt empty, why I could win every war but still not have peace. And then the black robes came. They were unarmed and unafraid, speaking of a single great spirit, one who came not with arrows or fire, but with love and wounds in his hands. The Jesuits, French missionaries, strange, silent, steady. They walked into our territory like lambs among wolves. I thought they were mad. No weapons, no demands, just words about a God who suffered, who forgave, who loved those who hated him. One of them stood out, Father Isaac Jogues. We called him Ondisonk, bird of prey. He wasn't just any priest. He was fire wrapped in mercy. He arrived in our lands in 1636. Learned and spoke our language better than many of our own. He hauled canoes through the mud. He prayed beside our sick. He endured cold winters with us. He didn't speak like a conqueror. He lived like a brother. I met him in the longhouse of Tinastia or St. Joseph. He was kneeling by a boy sick with fever, singing softly, tears in his eyes. That image never left me. One day I asked him why he stayed. Because Christ stayed, he said, through torture, through hate, for love. I asked him how he could endure suffering and still speak of love. He looked at me with eyes that knew pain and said, "Because I do not live for this life, my brother." That shattered me, because I realized I'd only ever lived for this life, for strength, for survival, for glory, for the here and now. I had always believed power came from the blade, but this man's strength came from something deeper. I watched. I questioned. I listened. I saw his hands mutilated by previous torture. He had been captured by the Iroquois, just like I had been in raids. But unlike me, he came back, not for revenge, but to serve again. That broke me. So I sat with them, listened, argued, challenged, watched, and eventually I believed. One night I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing this voice in my mind. Not his voice, not mine. Something deeper. I walked through the trees to the small chapel they built near the river. It was quiet, still, and in that silence I heard it again. Not a voice from outside, but from within. I dropped to my knees for the first time in my life. I stood up and said the words, "I follow Christ." On Easter Day, 1642, I was baptized. I took the name Eustache after a Roman soldier who gave his life for the same God I had now come to know. I didn't become weak. I didn't stop fighting, but I fought differently. I fought for peace, for mercy, for the message of the cross. I fought to explain to my people that faith wasn't betrayal, it was fulfillment. Some listened, some didn't, but I walked in peace even when I was alone. My people didn't understand. To them, I betrayed our gods, our ancestors. But I had found the one who made them all and the only one who could fill the silence I carried for years. They called me weak, soft, a fool. The council warned me that if I followed this foreign god, I would no longer be protected. I'd lose everything: status, honor, family. But I had already gained something greater: peace. Not the kind you win in battle, the kind that holds you together when everything else is breaking. That same year, Father Jogues asked me to accompany him on a peace mission down the St. Lawrence River to meet the Iroquois. We were trying to stop the bloodshed. We were ambushed. I was taken. Again. This time they knew who I was. They remembered every raid, every blow, every victory I'd earned in battle. I was a trophy, and they would make me pay. They tied me down, broke my fingers. They beat me, burned hatred into my flesh, and dragged me through the mud. They spit on me, laughed at my prayers, and tried to rip the faith from my lips. And still I prayed. For my people, for my captors, for the strength to finish my race with joy. Because what they couldn't understand was this: they were only breaking what had already been offered. In that cell, I remembered Gethsemane. I remembered the cross. I remembered the man who died forgiving his enemies. And I prayed not for rescue, but for courage. Father Jogues saw me, even in chains, even bloodied. He wept. He prayed beside me. He whispered, "Eustache, your soul is already home." And I believed him. Day after day, they broke my body trying to reach my soul. But what they didn't understand was this: they could burn my skin. They could crush my bones. But they couldn't take what had already been given away. One of them asked me, just before the end, "Where is your God now, warrior?" I looked at him, calm, broken, whole, and I said, "He's right here." The flames took my flesh, but I died free. I died as a warrior, not of war, but of love. In those final hours, I wasn't just a warrior. I was a witness. My body was broken. but my soul was undefeated. I never made it home, but my story did. The Jesuits, along with Father Jogues, who was ransomed and freed, returned and told others what I had done. Some wept, some believed, some followed the path I carved. Even now, my name, Ahatsistari, is still remembered in whispers, not just as a warrior, not just as a martyr, but as a man who traded the blade for the cross, and in doing so, found a peace no weapon could ever win. Eustache Ahatsistari was a real Huron war chief. His conversion to Christianity in 1642 through the ministry of Jesuit missionary Father Isaac Jogues was one of the most remarkable spiritual transformations recorded in 17th century North America. Despite being feared and respected for his military brilliance, Eustache found a deeper truth in the gospel. His baptism, life, and martyrdom helped catalyze spiritual openness among his people. He died in enemy hands later that year, never renouncing his faith. But his story did not die. It continues in memory and legacy, and now in you. Would you die for what you believe? Eustache did. And in doing so, he showed us all what it means to truly live. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe and click the bell icon to be notified when our next inspiring story is released.